Greetings, YouTube. This is Rhett at Rolling Forward. And this episode is going to be about a topic that comes up a lot still with many people, and it is about the accident. So this episode is going to be back to the scene of the accident, the other guys in the car. Recall there were 7 of us in that vehicle on that day. This is a question that frequently goes to my wife when I cannot hear. People will say, how was he hurt? What were the details? And that's kind of a human thing, maybe not one of the best human characteristics, not inherently bad really, but we're all to some degree rubberneckers and looky-loos, and if there's a crash in the middle of a NASCAR race, well, it's kind of exciting. You can go get your beer after the accident. But that is a part of us. Curiosity is most certainly a part of us all, and it's a good thing. This is not a bad thing, I don't think. Wanting to learn something about another person, about a group of people, another person or a group of people with whom you have had very little or no interaction in your life, and cannot be expected to know what you have never seen or been in contact with. So for me, it's not a bad thing per se. It sometimes leads to somewhat frankly rude behavior, but if we keep that out of it, the curiosity is, in my opinion, a good thing for humanity. And let's move on now. Please be aware that these other 6 people were not my closest group of friends. These were not my tightest people from school. This trip, this vacation to the Colorado River was a last-minute, spontaneous, unplanned trip. And so it was a couple of people here, a couple of people there. That was more characteristic, rather than some really good friends thinking about the upcoming school vacation and the ability to have time off to go on a vacation. So keep that in mind, please. And so you may recall that it was the night before the crash. I was at the sock hop at my high school, and I happened to go into the bathroom and happened to use a urinal next to the owner of the vehicle. And we were casual friends all through elementary and high school. And it was just chance that I walked up next to him and we spoke to each other while we were doing our business. The trip came up and I ended up going along with them. Just luck of the draw, the luck of turning left rather than right. Many things of our life are like this. When had I simply used a different urinal, my life would have been radically different than it is. But this is the way it is, so I'll move forward with that. And there's a funny little factoid. You recall also, perhaps, that when I went, I took a paper shopping bag full of canned food, for the most part, a loaf of bread and a jar of Welch's grape jelly. Well, in the accident, that bag was in the back of the vehicle, and some of the cans, 2 of the cans, I think, I heard this after the fact, of course. A couple of the cans were broken in the impact and the tumbling and what have you. Uh, so there was some impact there, going from 90 to 0 in a series of tumbles. Um, but the glass jar of jelly was fine. And one was several inches to the left or right of the other, and it's as simple as that, or as complex as that. Some of these passengers were no more than inches away from each other. Some died, and some didn't. Um, and how to predict which seat was a safe seat? Well, we didn't even know there was going to be an accident, of course, as none of us know what's going to happen 1 second from now in the future. Um, and that's life. Life um, sometimes brings you sudden and unexpected bad news, sometimes good news. But life goes on in a partially planned manner, always changing with um, luck or fate or chance. Um, and again, I'll say that to all of you out there who are not disabled and who are watching this video, I hope to learn a little bit more about the disability community. But all of you guys are only an accident away from joining us in the disabled community. Keep that in mind, not to dampen your life or to make you feel bad in any way, but sometimes bad things happen. Um, you never know. So, who were these other 6 people in the automobile with me back at that time? The driver of the vehicle, he was 3 years older than I am, than we were. He had graduated from high school the previous year. I did not know him well. I had known him casually at best for a number of years. And again, being involved in athletics exposes you maybe sometimes to several individuals and groups whom you wouldn't otherwise have been associated with. A 2 or 3 year difference in high school is a big difference, I know that. But the driver, not at all a close friend, but someone who we had known each other very casually for years, living in the same town. He died in the crash. The person riding shotgun was 2 years older than I, and he and I had played varsity football just a few months before the accident in the fall. He was a senior, I was a sophomore. He was a first string lineman, and I was not first string anything on the varsity team. But we became something of friends during our time during football season just a few months previously. He also died at the scene. Riding behind the driver of the car was me. And for those of you not paying attention, I am a quadriplegic. Sitting next to me in the middle of this back seat was someone whom I knew was also 2 years older than I am, than we were again. And he incurred a brain injury through head trauma in the accident, and it caused a lifelong injury and change in his abilities and behaviors. And he ended up working in the landscaping department of the Parks Department of a city government, not far from the town where we lived. Sitting behind the shotgun position of the front seat was another person 2 years older than me. He also had played football the prior fall, and he and I had become, something of friends. He was also an occasional surfer, and so we ran into each other, of course, at the beach, and knew him okay, um, probably more than, for example, the driver. We were a little bit closer than that, um, and had established something of a friendship during the football season. He incurred relatively minor injuries, um, some big, uh, well, rug burns or desert sand burns, scuffs, large scuffs, scabs, what have you. Overall, very minor injuries. Now, this vehicle, an international travel haul, like a big station wagon or like an SUV, um, it was noted, I just looked it up on the internet, and noted as the first kind of generation of the Chevy Suburban. So it was similar to that kind of SUV, a Ford Explorer. Um, so that portion behind the back seat, just an open area, were two people. Um, One of those people was the owner of the vehicle. He was 1 year older than I am, and uh, he lived just several blocks from my folks' house, and that's the house to which I walked the morning of the accident. He uh, broke one leg, minor, relatively speaking. Also got a pretty good number of desert burns, scuffs, scabs, um, but he recovered quickly and was just fine. And the other person in the back part of the car, he was also 3 years older than I, and he and I had known each other for, well, 3 or 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 even, and we had become something of friends, not particularly close, but something of friends. We were 3 years apart. So again, this is a significant difference when you're that age. Well, he died also in the accident. And so of the 7 people in the vehicle, 3 were killed, 1 spinal cord injury, me, 1 incidence of head trauma and brain injury was another person. And then the last 2 survivors, the 4 survivors, of the last 2 survivors, quite minor injuries from which they recovered in days or a couple of weeks. And that's the story of the people in the accident with me. Um, and so these were it was just chance, happenstance, uh, a weird coincidence that, you know, ended up having me in that vehicle rather than being somewhere else. And so on that, I'm going to end this video, and I want to thank you guys for watching yet another one of these videos. I thank you for watching. I again ask you to click subscribe and click like, and thank you, and YouTube, ciao.